Let's get started with today's episode. Our awe-inspiring special guest is Paula Gowland. After a simple accident turned into a life-threatening challenge that saw Paula lose the bottom half of her leg and very nearly her life, she underwent 32 surgeries and spent 756 long days and nights in hospital over 1,000 kilometres away from her husband and children. Paula's understanding of trauma and overcoming challenges against the odds is powerful. I'm so excited to speak with Paula today. Welcome, Paula. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
We are so lucky to have you here. Can you tell me a little bit about the instant that your life changed, the before and the after?
Yeah, okay. So actually, before my accident, I was just a normal mum of three at the time. My youngest was 7, my middle daughter was 12, and my eldest daughter was 17. And we were just a normal family that enjoyed lots of sport on weekends. We were outriggers. And I actually worked for a company called Bridgeworks, which was my job was to help people with disabilities enter back into the workforce, which become quite ironic once I became somebody on the other side. So I thought in 2014, I thought it was a great idea to stand on my bed and wash freshly and hang freshly washed curtains. So I stood on my bed, I had all the curtains together and I got all the little plasticky things together and was just gonna hang them. But the curtain rod was a little bit further away than I anticipated. And as I leaned forward, I had socks on and I slipped off my bed. I landed on my feet, but I broke my tibia and smashed the I broke my tibia bone in 4 places downwards and I smashed the tibia plateau bone, which is just under the kneecap, into a million pieces. So they rushed me, or they tried to rush me to hospital, but unfortunately the incident had happened at home and we were in a unit. And the unit we were in, they couldn't get the stretcher, the ambulance stretcher, in the lift. So they had to wait for a second ambulance. And then the second ambulance came along and they walked me down the stairs, got me to hospital. But unfortunately, my leg had swelled too much by then. And they decided to do external fixations. So I had the external fixations operation, but unfortunately, something went wrong after the operation, and I had what was called compartment syndrome. And that is where the muscles around there's a skin around the muscles, like a sausage skin, and that actually needed to be sliced open so that my muscles could breathe. But because that didn't happen, my muscles couldn't stretch any further with the swelling and they started to die. You only have 12 hours to fix compartment syndrome, and they found it 24 days later. So when they went in to fix what was a normal broken leg, and put pins, plates, and screws in, my leg was dying and was starting to become really, really infected. So
And I'm assuming when you say that it was dying from the outside, from the inside out, so therefore
correct.
you couldn't see it.
Yes, yes. The only signs we had in the early days was the bottom part of my foot was going green, which was gangrene. But that was probably after 3 or 4 weeks that we actually started to see that. So I had 7 operations to try and save my leg, and in the end, I sought a second opinion, and I had a doctor fly and meet me in Brisbane Airport. He took one look at me. He asked me, was I sweating? He checked my eyes and basically put me on the next plane, and he amputated that night to save my life. Unfortunately for me, there was probably, so I became a below knee amputee. And unfortunately, there was probably a centimetre left of infection in the bone. And that sent me on a journey of antibiotics in hospital. Now, at this point of time, my husband and kids were on here on the Sunshine Coast, and I was in a Sydney hospital. And with copious amounts of antibiotics, we could not get rid of the infection. The infection was so bad that it ended up taking my gallbladder. It started to affect my heart, and we were sliding down a slippery slope of actually the infection taking me out altogether. So after a year and a half, I decided to have it amputated above the knee to cut all of the infection out, and I became an above knee amputee, which by that stage, it was about 32 operations that I'd had to try and stay alive. I tried to die twice. And in 2017, in November 2017, I returned home to the Sunshine Coast with my family.
Wow, it seems like it's. Did you ever really appreciate how much trouble you were actually in? From hanging curtains in your bedroom to breaking your leg to all of a sudden possibly not
Not being here.
surviving?
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't until to cut to take my leg off the first time, it was kind of a relief because I'd been in hospital at that time, which I thought was a long time in that very short time, was which from June to September before we amputated. But I never ever realized until it started affecting my heart and my gallbladder, and I went into septic shock. And the team had said that through an operation to try and save my gallbladder from the infection, that my heart had stopped and they had to resuscitate me. And yeah, it really did start to I really did start to think I was not going to survive this. um
And once the leg was gone, was that, and excuse me if that was a really callous way of just saying it,
no, that's what happened.
did you go through a grieving process? Was that a
100%.
whole different
Yeah.
position that you
Yeah,
were
so
in?
that was kind of the start of the journey, I guess. To wake up that morning as a baloney amputee, I have to say that was quite easy compared to being an above knee amputee. To wake up that morning after my whole leg had been taken, and not have that knee joint to be able to support you, and learning to walk again at the age of 42, as well as trying to cope with the enormity of what had just happened. How was I going to be a mum? How was I going to work again? How was I going to play with my kids? Even in the early days, trying to comprehend even just walking because you were attached to a wheelchair. And, at that stage, I hadn't had osseointegration, so I didn't even have a leg. All of those things just kind of hit you all at once. And it was grieving a life that you thought you were never ever going to get back. Yeah.
And it's a different life from the one that you envisaged. It's totally different. You've got to
Totally different. And for me, look, to be perfectly honest, the first month was probably the hardest. I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. John had come down to me with me to have the surgery and then had to go back to Queensland to look after the kids. And it was in those 4 weeks that I had a choice. I had to give up and, I guess feel sorry for myself for the rest of my life, or I had a choice to just get on with it and keep going. But that also came with a lot of, for me, it actually really was minute by minute. I had to just get through each minute. And then I got through an hour without crying. And, it was a process that I actually had to go through to be able to be where I am today.
And that's actually one of my questions is, did you ever feel like giving up? And if so,
100%.
why didn't you? And what
Yeah,
made you continue to where you are today?
it was really easy. I guess, well, in my head, it was really easy. I was in a hospital, I was taking copious amounts of drugs. It would have been quite easy to just keep saying that I was in pain and keep having more drugs, which could have kept affecting me. And it was probably I was in an easy spot to be able to give up. But I also had three children and a husband, and I had spent my entire adult life telling my children that they could be and do anything that they wanted. And I all of a sudden found myself having to live into that. I couldn't tell them that they could be and do anything that they wanted if I couldn't even get through this. And my youngest was 7, so I couldn't just leave this world with a 7-year old. And unfortunately, my husband was a very lucky man that had never cooked or cleaned a day in his married life. So I knew that we were already in trouble because just feeding the kids was going to be a problem for John. So it was my kids that really, really kept me going.
And I think deep down too, whilst yes, it's absolutely your kids at the forefront that keep you going, there must also be a resilience inside of you that's like, I'm not going to let this beat me. Once we get over
Yeah,
the
yeah.
grief,
And when I wrote the book, I actually that came up a lot for me, like what actually gave me the strength to keep going, because I think, there was no rule book that said how do you navigate losing a leg at the age of 42, how do your children cope with that, how does your husband cope with that? There was nothing. And it I had to really find how did I get through it. And I really think I actually go back to I grew up as from the age of 0 to 10, I had an alcoholic mother. And I learned from a very young age that if you're going to need something or do something, you had to do it yourself. I spent most of my childhood looking after my sister and doing everything I could for my dad. And my dad and I's relationship was very much that you can be and do anything you set your mind to. And for me, living with an alcoholic mother, don't get me wrong, I had the best childhood ever because there was, we had parties in our house all the time, and I only ever saw the fun side of that. But I think what it did show me was how to be resilient and how to get things done from a very young age. And I think I drew on that strength from being a child with responsibilities at a very young age.
and you really do have to adapt quite quickly in those situations. So it's obviously something that you've learnt along the way to equip
Yes.
you to this point.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, trying to, there was you had to get out of a wheelchair if you were ever going to walk again. There was no if, buts, or maybe. You could stay in there or you could learn to walk, and you had to make those choices, and you had to say yes a lot.
Who's been your greatest source of support and inspiration?
I think it would have to be my late dad. He passed away 20 years ago now. But he has always remained with me. I talk a lot about the dragonfly in my book, and you know I truly believe that he comes back and just flutters around as a dragonfly, because whenever I have to make big decisions or wherever I have to think of big, hard, tough decisions, out of nowhere will come this dragonfly. So I think it's his inspiration. And I always ask myself, what would he have done? And usually it's always on the positive side of what he would have done, and then I just use that to keep going forward.
What role has resilience played in your life? You've mentioned resilience before, and really that you've shown an astronomical amount of resilience in coming back to where you are today. How have you done that?
I think it really comes down to setting goals. And I talk about, for me, it was minute by minute. And really, I had to set a goal just to be able to, in the very beginning, stop crying. And then I set another goal to, let's just get through a day. And then it was, okay, let's use this wheelchair that I absolutely despised to just wheel out to the front nurse's station and come back. And then it was, okay, let's use the crutches, and I set myself goals every single day. One goal was just to get up and get dressed. I'd been in that blue gown for I don't know how many months, and it was a goal that, okay, today I'm just going to go and put normal clothes on. Because I was attached to a drip, it was really easy to not do that, to get up and wash your hair. They were all little goals that I set in the very beginning. And then I think I just kept setting goals. It was, go to the gym 3 times a day instead of 2 times a day, or, do this workout that the nurses were wanting you to do. And it was goal after goal. And it's to be perfectly honest, I think that's got me through the whole entire thing. And that's where today we don't do anything without setting goals first so that we know where we're going.
And it sounds like they're very bite-sized goals,
Yes,
just to
yes.
get, you know,
Just to get you to the next point. And if I looked too far ahead, then it would become way too overwhelming. And it was much easier in the very beginning to just, for me to just go and talk to a nurse at the end of the station, or talk to somebody that I hadn't talked to before. And what that did is it eventually, I became the hospital social butterfly. And then I actually became helping others to inspire them to do the same things that I had done, just to be able to get up and get dressed. And then it became a ripple effect that if everybody had that really positive attitude in hospital, we were all able to get that little bit more out of ourselves. It was great.
so would you say that the turning point for you was in hospital, or was it when you got out?
There's two different sides to that story. It was definitely a turning point for me when I was in hospital, for me personally. But to be perfectly honest, when I got home, I actually thought, right, I'm home, everything is going to go back to normal. And when I arrived back home, everything was different. Everything was different. My husband was different. My kids were different. I all of a sudden felt like I didn't fit into the family. Nobody came to me like they used to as a mum. They went now to dad. Nobody, the communication that we had was different. Everything was different. And so it then became a journey of understanding where each of the children were at, because they were all different. I had to learn to get to know the husband that I hadn't been with for nearly 2.5 years. And that was a huge change and a journey that we had to go on and learn different things about. That brought up, my middle daughter had unfortunately gone down quite a bad road, being 12 and not having mum around. She wasn't coping very well, and she actually tried to commit suicide. My middle daughter, who had taken control of everything, was getting a lot of slack from her two siblings, who, she was trying to be mum, and they were like, well, you're not my mum. And of course, my 7-year-old just really absolutely hated his father, because he felt that John was stopping him from seeing his mum. Being 7, he didn't realize that you had to get on a plane and get to a different state. And he was just like, well, why are you not letting me see my mum?
And it really is. it's how you fit back into the family as well, because all of a sudden they've learnt how to cook, they've learnt how to clean, they've learnt how to wash.
Yep.
You'd
And
almost
my
feel,
husband had also learnt that alcohol became his wife. So that was a whole new side of our life that was not there when I left.
so how did you overcome that?
So I guess as a mum, I kind of had to figure out who needed me the most first. At that particular point, it was my middle daughter. And I went on a journey with her, and I got her the help that she needed, and I got her into rehab, and I helped her journey to get back to where she needed to be. And then it was working out, we had a huge lot of obstacles to overcome with John, and alcohol. And then that led us on a journey of him spiraling out of control, and having to make a choice, whether to drink or not to drink ever again. And he's now hasn't had a drink for, I think we're going on 5 years now. But it was really, and to be perfectly honest, it still hasn't stopped. There's things that come up each and every day for us in our daily lives, even though we're 10 years down the track, that we still have to deal with. Like at the moment, my 17-year-old has some quite severe abandonment issues, which is causing depression and social anxiety. And so it never stops. We're always dealing with different things that come up because of the accident.
And I'm assuming when you did finally get home, it's not only about the children and the husband and reassimilating, your life is totally different too. Was the house
Yes.
suitable for you? Were there stairs? Did you know
Yeah.
how to your
Yeah.
whole life has changed as well?
Yeah. So when I actually came home, we were living in a house where the kitchen was actually upstairs. My bedroom was downstairs, but the kids' bedrooms and the kitchen and the living room was all upstairs. And you're absolutely right. All of a sudden, I couldn't even function in my own house. And there was a very big breaking point where I actually went to the toilet downstairs, and I tripped over. My prosthetic leg malfunctioned, and I fell over, and I actually broke my other leg.
Oh,
And at that particular point in time, that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. After everything that I had been through, to get home and to try and navigate this house with the kitchen upstairs, and to then break the other leg, to be confined for another 15 weeks or 16 weeks downstairs, where there was no kitchen facilities, there was nothing, and had to rely on everybody again. That was probably one of the moments that I really had to push myself to continue to keep going.
you'd have to wonder what you did wrong in a different life.
I did say that a lot of times. What have I done in a previous life that has led to so much?
Mm.
Yeah.
Many people feel stuck or limited by their circumstances. How did you push past those limitations and turn them into opportunities?
Well, I guess my once I decided that I was going to fight for the life that I had before, losing a leg hadn't changed who I was inside. And I had to really own that. And I had to be okay to go out and have people talking about me. I'd had osseointegration that not many people back. I was only the 76th person to have osseointegration. So I don't actually wear a socket like most amputees do. I have a rod that's connected into my bone that my leg clicks on and off from. So the first instance was people looking at it, because they can see that there's a rod coming out of my leg, and they kind of go, how does that leg even work? So the first instance was people looking and people talking and people staring. And that was one of the first obstacles that I had to overcome. But once I learned to actually love me for who I was and what I now looked like, that's what made all the difference. I really believe, like truly owning the fact that I am an amputee and I do look different. And all I have to do now is find solutions to do life differently. I can still go and be that really cool mum. I just have to do it differently. I can still go to work. Nothing happened to my brain. I only just am missing a leg, but I can go to work and be who I want to be as long as I don't allow my disability to stop me.
Do you think a lot of it is about acceptance?
100%. I couldn't do what I did unless I could show up in my own skin and be okay with that. Be okay with who I was and how I looked.
What did
Yeah.
your accident teach you about yourself and the community?
Well, it actually taught me patience. I wasn't a very patient person when I had two legs, and I was I was always in a hurry. I never actually stopped to smell the roses. I never actually stopped to look or feel or be in the moment. I was always looking forward, looking far ahead or looking from behind. I was never actually in the moment. And I think what it did was made me, my life previous to becoming an amputee was quite rushed. We were always hustling. We were always, I had two jobs at the time, and life was always so busy. After the accident, it forced me to be stuck in a room with my own thoughts, be stuck in a room with, how I looked and how I felt, and it really forced me to understand patience and understand that there is more to life if you look. Um, and it really did take me on a journey of understanding myself.
It makes you live in the present,
100%. Yeah.
and it's not
And
about.
it also teaches you not to sweat the small stuff. Like, you know, I now I'm probably more relaxed now because, you know, is it is it something that I really need to worry about? Is it going to kill me, or is it something that I really need to worry about? And if so, then I work a plan to deal with it. But it's really about working up, understanding what's important for you.
What advice would you give to someone who feels like their disability is holding them back from pursuing their passions?
I'd really The advice that I would give to them would be to just work out what you want. If there was no limitations in this world and there was you didn't have to worry about money and you didn't have to worry about anything, your disability, what would you be doing? And if that once you work that out, then you just find solutions to your problems. If it each problem that is stopping you from getting to that, you just need to find solutions. And I think that's what I do really well is when I come up against a brick wall or when I come up against something that I think is too hard, it's finding solutions to whatever that problem might be.
And it doesn't matter how long a solution takes. I'm a firm believer that there is a solution for every single problem.
Everything. Yes.
You just need to sit and wait until that solution presents itself.
And sometimes it doesn't present itself in the way that you're thinking it's going to present itself.
Absolutely.
And most of the time, it's even better.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes the world can be slow to catch up to people with disabilities. I
Yes.
believe that, people with disabilities really are so far in front of, I'm going to say normal people, and I hate using that word, but people without a disability.
Yep.
How have you navigated society's perceptions and biases towards you, towards people with a disability, and what changes would you like to see in the future?
So when I first came home, I'd actually lost my job because I was in hospital for so long, and I I knew that I was quite qualified to do many things, but I really struggled with finding a job on the Sunshine Coast, that a business that actually had a lift instead of stairs. And I actually really struggled to, because in the early days, I was half in a wheelchair and half walking because I didn't have the strength to walk straight away. And so people would see me in a wheelchair and automatically dismiss the fact that they wouldn't hire me because I was a liability because I was already in a wheelchair. And and that made me quite frustrated, which is what led me to starting my own business. I think that that was the push that I had, because I was just finding it so tough to find a job in in society. But so I went on then to purchase Sunshine Coast Art and Framing Gallery. But I also, in the early days, that was really challenging to be knocked back for positions that you knew that you were absolutely qualified for. It's just that you couldn't get to the office because there was no lift. Um, so that became very frustrating. And I think the things that, even now as a as an amputee, I find walking around and navigating roads and streets that are uneven is very challenging, because even for an amputee, we're really great on flat ground, but we're not great on hills and gutters and things like that that we have to navigate. And I think there's a lot that could be done around, especially the Sunshine Coast, for people with disabilities. Even just being able to get to the water or the beach for people with disabilities, like trying to push a wheelchair through to the water's edge is pretty much impossible. Um, and and just to get to be able to swim in the ocean became very challenging. The other thing that I did learn, though, as well, was community. That communities can be absolutely amazing. We were very much involved with my son at the time of the accident with foot rugby league, and we actually had the Men of League rally around us to um, the whole rugby league community got behind raising $20,000 for me for my first leg. And that was the first sense of, oh my God, people actually really do care. And and that community we still are in contact with today. And another community that we had was the Mooloolaba Outriggers, and they also they started an amputee. They actually built a disability ramp so that people like me could get into canoes and still do canoeing. So, as much as there was a downside in the community to being disabled, being part of communities was also one of the real things that also kept me and my family going.
As I've spoken to quite a few people with these podcasts, the one thing that keeps coming up is about stairs. And
Yeah.
people honestly do not realize and take for granted how lucky they are and how accessible it makes it to have two legs or to, have a ramp. It's something
Yes,
so simple, yet is overlooked by so
by
many
so many
people
people.
and the community. I
Yeah.
really do hope that we are getting better. But on the other side of that, you talk about the community, and I'm sure that you felt like people just cared with
Yes.
all of a sudden you were not alone and
Yes.
people actually wanted to
To
help.
help. We actually had another community that ran what they called Many Miles for Paula. And they actually brought a whole group of business people together, and they ran around the Sunshine Coast University's athletic track raising money for me. And they actually raised about $25,000 for me to buy my first microprocessor leg.
Wow,
And
that is amazing.
that was just to stand on stage and receive a check for $25,000 from strangers and people that you had never met before was phenomenal. Like it was the real part. That was the real sense of community, that people really do care.
It's quite humbling for
Yeah.
people that you don't know
Yeah, and I
in
think
that
that
way.
also gives you more strength to keep going, because they people had donated money that didn't even know me. They knew of my story, but they actually didn't know me. And so I actually felt this sense that I could never give up now. How can I give up when these people are giving me um, legs and opportunities that I couldn't have provided for myself? So there's no way I could give up. So it also gave you that sense to keep going.
So where are you now, Paula? What does your life look like now?
So now we are still a family. All five of us are still very happy and healthy. And John and I's relationship is stronger than ever. He also has not had a drink for um, 5 years. And my son's about to turn 18, and he works for us in our business. My middle daughter is a childcare teacher, and my eldest daughter is a midwife. So, as for a family, we are all really, really happy. I actually own two businesses now. I own Sunshine Coast Art and Framing Gallery in Minyama, with two locations, one in Minyama and one in Noosa. And I also own Sunquest Signs. I'm the GM of both of those businesses. So just there's 35 people combined in those three businesses that we manage and look after every day. And I've written a book called Legless, which is my journey to inspire others to never give up. And I'm also a mindset and transformation coach. So I'm now looking for people out in the community that I can help to be able to help them set goals to achieve whatever it is that they want in their life.
So looking back as to where you are today, and as much as nobody wants to go through and lose a limb or become disabled in any way, how what are your hopes for the future?
Oh, look, my hopes for the future are to make sure that people, when people get stuck, I want to be able to help them to be able to move forward and see that there is a better life, that they don't have to remain stuck in their disability. I really hope to inspire as many people as I can to take that next step and not have the fear of the judgment of the disability, or the fear that they can't do what they do. I have met some amazing people that have way worse disabilities than me, that are doing much more, even better things than I am. And it's just so great to see that people aren't allowing their disability to define them. And if I can help others to make that do that for them, then that's where I'm very fortunate that both of my businesses allow me now to be able to give back. And I've had so much help from community. I've had so much help from people and strangers that, I've inspired people, and I didn't even know them. I get so many letters and emails saying thank you, and I've never met these people before. So imagine the impact I can have if I do meet them. And that's where I can be in that space now.
And that is so lovely to hear. My company is actually Inspires and Co, because I believe inspiration is, the start of everything. Everyone can be inspired in some form.
Yeah.
As we wrap this up, what's your final piece of advice for our listeners?
Oh, look, the final piece of advice is to never give up. And there is no limits in life. There is absolutely no limits, and we can live an extraordinary life. We just have to look at things differently.
Mindset is such an important piece, or in fact, it's
Yes,
the missing piece of everything.
what goes between these two ears is so very important. And if I think if we have a healthy mindset, then everything for us just falls into place.
Thank you so much for sharing your story today, Paula. It has been inspirational to hear and see where you've come from to where you are now. We've loved sharing today's show with you, and we hope our intention to make a difference is reaching through the airwaves to you and your loved ones. Feel free
Oh,
to
thank
check out the
you.
show notes for the links you need to stay connected to Paula. Go to our Facebook page to engage with us at facebook.com/navigating disability. And wherever you're listening or watching this show, please give us a thumbs up, a heart, or 5-star rating. Share this show with as many people as you can, and let's make this world of disability a better place, one conversation at a time. Bye for now, everyone. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.